In this video, you will learn how to reach more members with hybrid meetings. Hybrid meetings combine in-person and online participants into one meeting. We'll start with the benefits of using hybrid meetings to reach your current members as well as for finding new members. I will share some best practices for the technical setup as well as some tips for communicating better in hybrid meetings. At the end, I've also included the Q&A session. You can jump between the different sections of the video with the chapter markings, and there's links to everything I'm talking about in the description below the video. My name is Markus Seppälä, and on this channel, I help you engage better with your audience. The examples that you will hear in this presentation are from Toastmasters, where this workshop was recorded. But these tips apply to any organization that is considering hybrid meetings. It could be a social club, it could be a not-for-profit organization, or it could even be a meetup where you are considering doing hybrid events. All right, thank you very much for that introduction. As stated, the theme of today of this presentation is how to reach more members with hybrid meetings. And this is an example of a hybrid meeting from actually this week here at Basel International Speakers. And we're going to dive more into the details, but here's the agenda for today. We are going to share some best practices for hybrid meetings in case you want to get started with them or want to improve yours. After that, we're going to do a long questions and answers block, and we're going to finish off with with an outlook, some closing thoughts on how you can move forward with your hybrid meetings. So let's jump in here to the first question. What is, in fact, a hybrid meeting? Well, a hybrid meeting could be this. This could be a hybrid meeting. This was our very first ever hybrid meeting here at Basel International Speakers, and I've definitely developed this setup since then. But let's start with the beginning. What is a hybrid meeting? A hybrid meeting combines meeting participants that are in a room together and other meeting participants who are joining online via video conferencing. And this is going to be the case for many of our Toastmasters clubs going forward, but we should always look at how can we apply these skills in the real world as well. And these kinds of hybrid meetings are probably going to happen out in the corporate world, in other organizations as well. So while it usually is a room plus online participants, you could actually have a different kind of hybrid meeting as well, where you have two rooms connected via video conferencing. For example, if you have a corporate club that has offices in different parts of the country, they might connect as well. And that kind of setup also has some of the same challenges that we would have in the more traditional version of it. Also, hybrid teaching that many of us have witnessed is a type of hybrid meeting as well. So let's move over to some of the benefits of hybrid meetings. I want to cover the benefits first before we go into the actual technology aspects of it, because this presentation is all about how you can reach more members with hybrid meetings, and I want to share some thoughts about that. The first set of thoughts that I want to talk about is the benefits for our current members, and then we're going to talk about new members and the bigger organization as well. And the benefits really depends on how where you're starting at. If you're starting now with an online-only meeting and you add an in-person component to that meeting, you're going to be able to reach those people who don't want to participate in online meetings. Certainly in my club here in Switzerland, we have some members who are not interested in online at all. So that's one group of people that you're going to be able to reach. You are also going to find, of course, that some communication is much easier in person than online. So you're going to reach those benefits as well. If you start from the position of having in-person meetings and then you add an online component, that will also allow you to reach more members. And I'll give you a couple of silly examples here from Switzerland. So I live in Basel, Switzerland, which is just next to the borders of Germany and France. And the border to France is only 10 minutes walk from my house. The border to Germany is only 35 minutes walk from my house. And our club president actually lives in France. Our sergeant at arms lives in Germany. And now because the borders have been closed, they have actually not been able to join us physically, and instead they're able to join us online. So it's a great addition for those members who for some reason cannot join physically. And this could be a very practical reason. Let's say that they're running late, for example, at the office, and they could just dial in instead. But the silliest example that I want to give you is one of our members, he went on a trip to the United Kingdom about a year ago. I can't remember if it was to visit his family or work trip. And because of the current situation, he has not been able to cross the border from the UK back to Switzerland. So he's been stuck there for a year. And he continues to attend our meetings virtually via video conferencing. So you can see that there's already an opportunity to reach more of our current members with hybrid meetings. But now let's look at reaching new members and new guests. And the easiest way for me to think about it is that if we can offer a potential member the opportunity to come online or to come in person, well, that basically doubles our addressable market. And of course, people can also combine. They can come online one day and then they can join in person one day. So there's an opportunity for us to double our exposure as well using online and offline marketing. But there is a kind of a broader point that I want to make. I always think that the most important thing that we can do in a Toastmasters club is to provide great club meetings. If we provide great club meetings, then people will come back and people will join. I think that's the core product that we should focus on. And if we can provide hybrid meetings that are something new, something exciting, if we can do it well, that in itself is going to increase the interest of other people in the area. And I think here in Basel, Switzerland, I think we're the only club doing hybrid meetings at the moment, and it's a unique selling point that only we do. So it's also an aspect of club quality if we can make these hybrid meetings happen. And the final benefit of hybrid meetings is that if we as Toastmasters, as the bigger Toastmasters community, if we can get good at this, we can take a leadership position and position Toastmasters as a leader, a thought leader in this area as well. And I'm going to say a little bit more about that at the end of the presentation as well. So I think there's plenty of benefits of doing hybrid meetings, and I hope I've convinced you, at least piqued your interest in the area of hybrid meetings as we move over to the more tactical side. How do we actually make this happen? So I want to move over and talk about gear for hybrid meetings. This is more the technical aspect of the hybrid meetings. So what gear do you actually need? Well, here's one answer. This right here is our current hybrid meeting setup. I took this photo Wednesday this week. There is another aspect of this is this, viewing the hybrid meeting from the stage. Another answer to what gear do you need? This is another answer. Here there is, and I'm going to go into the details a little bit more. Here there's no fancy camera, for example. And another answer to this is this setup. In the previous versions, you saw a conference speakerphone, which acts as a microphone and a loudspeaker to transmit the audio. But in this setup, this is one of our earlier setup, and it's being modeled by our club president, Nina. In this setup, there is only a wired lavalier microphone connected to the mic stand, and then there is, I can make it a little bit bigger as well, and then there is a Bluetooth speaker that transmits the audio into the room. You can also see that there's a camera in there, but in the next version of this, there is no fancy camera. This is our first ever hybrid meeting. And this doesn't even have a projector in it. The audio is the same setup as before, picked up by the microphone on stage, broadcast by the Bluetooth speaker. The phone is working as a primary camera directed towards the stage, and the laptop is working as a secondary camera directed towards the audience and also functions as the display. Now, this setup is not great. Like, this was our first setup, but this is not, I wouldn't recommend that you do this necessarily, but I want to show these different setups just to show you that a hybrid meeting is not one thing. And I really want to encourage you, if you want to go down this route, to try with the stuff you already own, and don't make investments before you find out if this is actually something that you want to do. So let's switch to the next one here, because I want to talk a little bit about what gear do you actually need in more broad terms. And in my mind, there are 5 requirements technology-wise. The first one is to have a stable internet connection. If you don't have a stable internet connection, you're not going to be able to run a hybrid meetings. Or will you? We'll talk more about that in a bit as well. The next 2 items that you need is the audio solution. So you need to make sure that the people in the room can hear the people online, and that the people online can hear the people in the room. And that audio is incredibly important, because without that audio, you can't really have it. And you saw in the examples that sometimes I had a Bluetooth speaker broadcasting the audio into the room. Sometimes I had a conference speakerphone that does that as well. I tried different microphones in the conference speaker, and you can really get started with whatever you have so long as you fulfill those basic requirements. And for points number 4 and 5, we're talking about video. It's a good idea to make sure that the people in the room can see the people online and that the people online can see the people in the room. However, it's not essential. You can run a hybrid meeting without video. And I'm actually going to show you an example of this. First, by the way, if you want to see exactly what gear I use in my hybrid meetings, I made a list there at markuspresents.com/gear. But the next slide I want to show you, this is our hybrid meeting that happened 2 weeks ago. And what you can see here on this slide is a number of black boxes on my Zoom meeting. And in those few boxes where you can actually see a picture, it's just a still image. The video was frozen. And what happened in this case was that the internet connection that we used, it reached its maximum capacity because other groups in the same building were using it as well. And I'm showing you this example for 2 reasons. One is that you have to be prepared for something to go wrong, right? And the second point is that even though I was not able to see anybody's video as I'm standing here on stage, we were still able to execute the meeting. We were still able to have a successful meeting even though the internet connection completely broke down because audio still worked. So it really doesn't have to be perfect, and this is an example where we were able to make it work anyway. I wouldn't recommend this setup. You should have working video, but you can run it without a complete setup. So long as you're in, and the way Zoom actually works is that it prioritizes the right thing. So in this setup, I could clearly hear all the people in the meeting, and they could hear me, except the video wasn't working. So that was the right prioritization by the Zoom software. Let's move over to the next point that I want to make here. If you start with basically what you have, I think you're going to have a better time. So really don't invest in equipment before you actually know it. And I'm going to give you an example of a setup that meets these requirements that I mentioned. Stable internet connection, everybody can hear each other on both sides, and everybody can see each other on both sides. We had a committee meeting that was a hybrid meeting on that dining room table there behind me. All I had was a laptop. And that laptop has a camera, it has a screen, it has a microphone, and it has a speaker. And in that hybrid committee meeting, we had 5 people joining physically here in my apartment and 2 people joining online. And it was a successful hybrid meeting. So I really encourage you to, if you get started with hybrid meetings, just think of what do you need the technology to actually do, and start there and start building up and see if you already have the equipment for it. And then you can start looking at what kind of fancy equipment do you need. And it is a good idea to have, for example, a projector like we have in our full setup, but you can get started even before it. Maybe let's see if I can quickly find that slide there. So this is actually our current, a version of our current hybrid meeting setup. So it does have a fancy camera, it has a conference speakerphone, and it has a second camera in the form of that mobile phone. But as I mentioned, you can do it also with just a laptop. We're going to come back to that in a little bit. And we're going to do a long Q&A session so that if you have any tech questions, I'll be very happy to answer them. But I want to move over to some lessons learned here that are not always related to the technology. And the first lesson learned, and I'm going to put this in a few different tips. First tip that I want to share is that when you run a hybrid meeting, it is incredibly important that you include everybody. And when I say include everybody, I mean a couple of different things. One is that when I'm organizing the meeting in the room and I have members that are participating online, it is incredibly easy to forget about the participants online. And I, as a leader, as an organizer, as currently the Vice President of Education, have to make sure that they are included. And I have to make conscious efforts to do that. So here's one trick that I usually use. When we have a round of introductions before the meeting really gets going, I usually ask people to share one thought of the day. And I often start with the people online just so that I don't forget them. But it doesn't always go so well. I did overcorrect the other day. I went through everybody online, then I asked, did I forget anybody? And then everybody in the room raised their hands because I had actually forgotten everybody who was in the room physically with me. So you will learn to figure this out, but that's one way of including everybody. And we have had all the roles in a Toastmasters meeting performed by people online and people in the room. And if we really want to include everybody, we need to make sure that the meeting can be led and managed from both sides. That's very important. But the other aspect of including everybody is also, let me just show you this this slide here. This is our, let's see if I can put it full screen. So this is our current hybrid meeting setup. And another technique that I use to include everybody is to make sure that I explain the setup. Especially for the people who join me here in the room, they may not be familiar with how does this actually work. So I take the time to explain to them. For example, the camera is on the top left corner of that room. You need to look in that photo. You need to look into the camera and not look into the screen. That's one of the things. The conference speakerphone, you can see it there in the center of the table. And that's about maybe 10 feet away, something like that, from where I'm speaking. And people have the tendency to yell because they see it's 10 feet away, I have to speak louder. But I have to tell them, no, you actually don't have to speak louder. It will adjust its volume according to a normal speaking volume. So these are things that are really important. And it could be that this is repetition for some members, but it's super important for those people who are there for the first time, or even people who have heard it before, to explain the setup. That's a great way to include people in the event, I think. And the other aspect is also that I often change the setup as well, so it can vary from time to time. There's one aspect that I didn't talk about yet, and that is the people who are joining online. So of course we want to include them, but their technical setup is a lot easier than our setup in the room because they're just using the normal video conferencing setup, like all of you are joining this with a laptop or a phone. For them, it's the same as any other video conference. But this is also a trap because it might be easy to think that we just bring the same setup that we have in our homes over to the Toastmasters meeting and we can run it like that. But the trap is that when you have multiple people trying to use the same device, you are going to need to think a little bit more. You have to treat it more as a video production and less as a video conference, I would say. And one of the part of its trap is that people might think, why don't everybody just bring their own laptops with them and put them on the table in the room? And this does not work. And the reason that doesn't work is because you will have audio bleeding through the different devices. So an absolutely critical technical aspect is that you only have one microphone and one speaker active in the room, and they should be connected to the same device. In our case, that device is that laptop. So the conference speakerphone is connected to the laptop, and that handles audio in and out. In the previous version where I had the Bluetooth speaker and the wired microphone, they were also connected to the same laptop. So just remember that, disconnect the audio for everything that is not that's not connected to the same device. If you're getting value from these tips, hit the like button. Let's move over to the next lesson learned here. And this is tip number 2, tolerate failure. Your first hybrid meeting is not going to be perfect. My 10th hybrid meeting was not perfect, and this is something that is going to happen. And you have to be comfortable with some technical hiccups. But there's some things that you can do to mitigate this, and this is actually part of inclusion as well. Remember how I was saying that we need to include everybody. So one way that you can include everybody and deal with these failures is to get help from the other members of your Toastmasters Club when you're organizing this. And this, for me, is a tough tip because I am horrible at this. All of these hybrid meetings that I've organized, it's been my equipment. I've been setting it up. Lately, I've been showing up 2 hours before the meeting starts so that I can get everything set up. And that's not sustainable, that's not healthy, this is not what we should be doing. But this is, my recommendation is to really make sure that you include the other people in the organization as well. And they can maybe check if something wasn't completely correctly set up, or they can come up with ideas. And many of the ways in which I've improved my hybrid meeting, or our club's hybrid meeting rather, see, that's that mentality again. Many of the ways that we've improved is that we've actually taken tips from the members. For example, in an early version, there was the timing device, the timing cards, was too far away from the camera so that the online participant actually couldn't see it. So that's another way in which we changed it up a little bit. Let's see if I can go. Oh yeah, so yeah, tolerate failure, that was the point. So the example that I told before, where we lost the internet connection, we only had these black squares on Zoom, we were still able to complete the meeting. I have also had the battery on my laptop run out on me in previous versions of the meeting. I was able to use it on battery power throughout the whole meeting, but one time it ended up because we had a different setup. So that also worked because I was able to continue the meeting from the phone. Right, that little cell phone that I have there, let's see if we can put that on screen. So that mobile phone there, that then became the host of the meeting, and I was able to continue the meeting. So really, tolerate failure. It's not going to go perfect, but it's a great opportunity for us to learn. The next tip that I want to share with you for hybrid meetings, and this is more on the communication side, and this one is to use visual aids thoughtfully. We already know about death by PowerPoint and how boring that can be in a normal video conferencing meeting. But in a hybrid meeting, the risk of using visual aids incorrectly is actually so much greater. Actually, maybe I can show that on that other. I'll give you one example. If you are sitting at a seat in the back of this room, and there's a projector here behind me on stage, there is a good chance that you are not going to be able to see what's on the projector if somebody online is presenting. However, everybody is sitting at home at their own laptops, they're going to have their screen very close to them, so they are easily going to be able to see it. And it's very easy to forget the audience that you have in the room, and especially if you don't know, will they be able to see the screen or not? Will the screen even, or will the Zoom meeting even be on speaker view, or is it going to be on gallery view? So you have to think about really carefully about how are you going to use visuals in these cases. Let's take an example from the other perspective. Let's say that I'm going to switch the slides very quick. Let's say that I'm presenting in the in-person meeting and I want to show them this phone tripod, for example. So let's say that I want to demonstrate that you can set this up as a second camera for your hybrid meeting like this. I need to make sure that I'm close enough physically to the camera so that anybody can see this. And especially if I'm not in charge of the camera, I may not know, are people actually going to be able to see this? Do I have to hold it close to the camera? Where do I have to hold it? So really think hard about visual aids and ensure that people both online and in the room can see them. The next tip that I have here on my list is also about the communication side. And this is different before, is to engage within the constraints. There are, in a hybrid meeting like this, there are obviously some constraints. It is different than presenting purely in person, and it is different than presenting only online. And I'll just give you one example. If I wanted to ask a question to the audience, which is usually a great audience engagement technique, I might ask something like, who here has been to a hybrid meeting before? That question might work in person, but it's a badly formatted question because I'm not giving you any clue about how to actually answer it. But if I format the question like this, if you've ever been to a hybrid meeting, please raise your hand. That's a pretty good audience engagement technique because the people in the room can just raise their hand. And the people online, they can also raise their hand. If they don't have their camera on, they can click on the little thumbs button, for example. So really think hard about audience engagement techniques that you can use within these constraints. And this includes the fact that people are on mute. So this will encourage you to really think about ways to engage when people are remote and mute and you don't see them visually. engaging with within these constraints was the last of my official tips here in my prepared remarks. And I mentioned before that we're going to do a longish Q&A session, and then I'm going to come back with a few more comments later on. I've actually set up this in a software called OBS Studio. It's a free and open source video production studio, and I've created these different scenes here inside of OBS. So there's 4 scenes. There's this one, there's this one that has me in a little corner there. There's the scenes only, there's the slides only, and then there's the webcam only. So I created those 4 scenes inside of OBS Studio, and then in Zoom, I've selected the OBS virtual camera as my camera out, and then I've started the virtual camera inside of OBS Studio. And there's so many things you could do with OBS Studio. I actually use it at our club meetings as well. For example, I have a slideshow that cycles slides where we advertise our Facebook page, we give contact information to the VP membership, and that is all done with OBS Studio as well. So OBS Studio is a great tool for sharing slides, and I especially like this this layout where I have the slides next to me, but I'm still in full screen. And if you want to create exactly this slide, I have a link to that. I have a video about that on my YouTube channel where you can actually see exactly step by step how to create this. So that's OBS Studio for you. Highly recommended for any speaker. Incidentally, if you just want to copy my slide layout, you can do that at markuspresents.com/OBS. Our room is actually a windowless bunker in like a basement level. So there is no noise coming from anywhere, except that there is a dance studio above us, so we can hear the people dancing above us. So noise pollution may be one thing. In the current public health situation, maybe you also want to have something with good ventilation. But I think you can make any space really work for this. The internet connection, I think, is the most important thing. The lack of windows in our case, I think, is actually good because window light with video can be a little bit unstable. In my setup right here, right now, I'm actually using a window as my main light source. But so a windowless room can actually be a benefit. But so long as you have a strong internet connection and you have some place to put your gear, I think most any rooms would work. One benefit that we do have in our room is that there is quite good, see, we can probably not see it on this photo. There's quite good kind of soundproofing in the ceiling and in the floor, so that there is not a lot of echo in that room, and that kind of echo can be a problem for a hybrid meeting. However, Zoom is quite good at canceling noise like that. The conference speakerphone that I use, that has built-in echo cancellation as well and noise cancellation. So some of the tools can actually sort that out for you. The best answer is to just try something. See if it works. If it doesn't work, you can maybe figure it out. And one last thing that maybe I should mention. Yeah, I'm going to quickly see if I can find a better slide where I can demonstrate this. Okay, let's use this one. This was the photo that I took on our meeting this week. There is a little bit of light all over the place. You can see that there's a number of spotlights. So I have turned those spotlights very strategically so that you can actually see the speaker. So I think in any video production, it's important to light the speaker correctly. Like I said, I have window light here and I have a LED light here. And if you have a room where you can adjust the lighting, that could be helpful as well, but shouldn't be a huge problem. It depends on the setup that you have. If it's something that you would have to build up and remove after every meeting, that might be overkill. But if it's something that you can leave in that space, that might work. So curtains are going to help pick up that or reduce that echo. A carpet on the floor is going to help. You can also get like proper sound foam. But there are more simple things that you can do as well. This doesn't apply so much to hybrid meetings where it's a big space. But if you have a small space, you can just put a blanket in front of you. So previously, in my previous setup, I actually had physically a blanket here leaning up against my monitor and on my desk to reduce echo, because I have a lot of hard walls here as well. But I think just test it in the room. It's difficult to speculate before you actually test it. It covered kind of a part of my monitor here in front of me, and then I had my camera above my monitor. So if we look at the order of importance, first, internet connection, second, audio in and out, and third, video in and out. Let's say that the internet connection is already sorted in the venue. I would start with the audio. And that conference speakerphone that I use, you can see here. Oh, by the way, now I have to admit something. So this photo was taken during the live actual meeting, whereas the other photos I took them after everybody had left because I wanted to clean up everything. So this is like super messy. All the cables are super messy here, whereas all the other ones are a little bit more staged. Embarrassed, but that's the way I do it. Anyway, so that's conference speakerphone that you see there in the center of the table. That costs about $200. So that might be a good place to start because it solves two of the problems that we have. It solves the audio in and audio out at the same time. It also has a built-in noise cancellation, so like typing sounds and people tapping on the floor to cancel stuff like that, and also echo. That's probably where I would start, but before buying anything, I would just try with the equipment you already own. Like you can do a hybrid meeting with a laptop, and some member probably has a Bluetooth speaker already. Maybe somebody has a cheap microphone. In our first version, in our very first version, let's go back to the very first version. This one here, that lavalier microphone, which is clipped to that mic stand, that costs $20. It's a wired lavalier microphone. So I would really try to get started with the equipment you already own, and then you can start upgrading. And I think audio upgrade, like a nice conference speakerphone or a microphone, might be a good idea. What I would not recommend is to invest in a complicated wireless microphone system because you probably don't want to be passing the mic around. You probably want to have the mic stable in a place where people go to, or that they can that they can pick up the sound from anywhere in the room with a conference speaker. I am not saying that you should do hybrid meetings. I'm saying that you should consider it. It could be that the hybrid meetings are not the great choice for you, and you may not want to do it. You may not have the capability of doing it. Your members may not be interested in it. And if your members are not interested in hybrid meetings, then don't do hybrid meetings. But I do recommend at least to float the idea, to give it a go, because you are broadening your potential reach. If you can reach people who are physically there, or people who are there online, you can potentially double your total addressable market. It's a great way to do it. You may have members who leave the club because they move somewhere else, but they might want to continue joining your meetings in that other place where they are, if they can do it online. And it is a great opportunity to also practice just a new form of running meetings. Because I think we are future-proofing ourselves by learning to do hybrid meetings and learning to do them well. So I think there are plenty of benefits of doing hybrid meetings. But if your members don't want to do it, then don't do it. We're a democratic organization, and we should deliver the value that our members are looking for, and nothing else. The setup that we had in our basement location was that the Wi-Fi hotspot was on the top floor where the dancing group was using it, and because the dancing group was using it, that's why we got those black screens that we talked about before. So the venue actually sorted that out for us, and they used Wi-Fi or Ethernet over power lines. So they got one of those power line routers on the top floor, and then because the power lines run through the building, they actually have these Wi-Fi points next in the room based on that, because they didn't want to pull any more cables. So that's one way of doing it. I guess you can also get a Wi-Fi repeater or an additional access point, but I think these things are often dependent on what the venue can do for you, and maybe not in your direct control. Another aspect of it is, if you don't have access to Wi-Fi, you may be able to run this over a mobile network as well, if you have good mobile coverage. And with the way Zoom prioritizes the right traffic, it might be perfectly okay. Maybe people will have a low frame rate on the video, but the audio should come through, and you should be able to do it. Once again, it's just something that you have to try out. I'm happy that our venue upgraded the Wi-Fi. And it was a bit of a hassle to do it beforehand, but we were able to do it as well. And in practical terms, it meant that before the upgrade, we were reasonably able to only have one camera, sometimes two, But in the meeting that I had this week, I was able to have 3 cameras without any problems at all. One showing the stage, one showing the audience, and then I had another handheld where I actually showed the meeting setup to those people who were interested. If there's a TV there, use the TV. In our space there is, this is a decent example of this, right? In our space there is just a blank projector canvas there, and we have brought our own projector, and I just placed it on top of the box in which it came, and it's just standing there, and I've modified the setup a little bit later. So because this is what was available in the venue, this was the best choice for us. If there was a TV here, I would rather use the TV. Here's the reason. The projector makes noise. And in fact, the fan noise from the projector was picked up on the microphone at our last meeting until I actually changed the noise cancellation in Zoom. Usually I have noise cancellation on low, but I changed it to auto, and that took away that fan noise. So if you have a TV, use a TV. If all you have is a projector, then use a projector. Of course, with a projector, you can be a little bit more flexible. You can point it in other directions. As I think somebody was saying before, earlier on today, is that you can actually project the meeting to a wall on the side instead of in my setup here where the projection is actually behind the speaker. So typically you would have the speaker where you have, maybe we can, so in this layout we would have the speaker approximately where that computer is standing, or maybe where that mobile phone is standing, and the projection would be slightly behind them and a little bit to the right. So it may be a good idea to try if you can have the projection on a separate wall, but it may not be essential that the speaker can actually see the online meeting. It may be more important for the speaker to look into the camera rather than at the online participants. So I would say, once again, start with what you have and kind of figure it out from there. Start before you're ready. It's a good expression. Very simple solution. Don't use slides. If you have the urge to use slides in your presentation, you're probably mistaken. You probably should not use slides. Slides are the best way to disengage your audience. If you do want to do it, for me, OBS Studio works really great. I really like the fact that I have the flexibility of sharing the slides like this. But sharing the slides like this is not the most important part. The most important part is that I can take them away, because people have slides on for the whole presentation. The key, in my opinion, about communicating virtually is that you can take away the slides. That's the most important, because this is how you actually communicate. In a physical environment, you can look at the slides or you can look at the speaker. Online, you can't do that. But for me, OBS Studio is worth learning. But if all you have is PowerPoint, then use PowerPoint, but just stop the screen sharing every now and again. That would be my tip. But I think a better choice is talk to the people who are deciding the policy. You can probably convince them that this is in the interest of your employees, that they can continue communicating like this. Because I think communicating externally is going to be valuable for vendors and for potential clients and everybody. You don't, in order to participate in a hybrid meeting, you don't have to be good at technology. If you join one of our meetings in person, you just walk in and you don't have to do anything to do with the technology, because somebody like me has already set it up. So there's no technology skills required for somebody who just walks into the in-person portion of it. All they have to be mindful is to look into the camera when they speak and stand the right distance from the microphone. So my microphone is down here, for example. That's all you have to do. You don't have to do anything. Same thing with the people who are joining online. I think many people who are not comfortable with technology, they have learned it in the most recent year. And they don't have to participate actively in the organizing of it. They just have to focus more on the communication side. And I think that's what we're here to learn anyway. So long as you have a couple of people in the club who are comfortable with the technology side, they can handle that. And the members who are not, they have other skills that they can bring as well. And we should also not have prejudice. For example, we might think that the older members, for example, are not going to be interested in the technology. That's not the case at all in our club, for example. So I think we can sort it out. And not everybody's going to like everything we do, but that's life. if you want, but it's up to the individual club. In the agenda management system that we use here in Europe called EasySpeak, there is a secret officer role called IT support. I think that I think that's making it too complicated. I think that's the opposite of keeping it simple. And if you build this up the right way, you're actually going to have the whole team helping in running this hybrid meeting, especially if you can get people to help. I've been doing this as Vice President Education for the current term, but it doesn't really have anything to do with my role. It's just I had an interest in this and I had a YouTube channel, so so for me it was a good fit. I don't think we need more officers. I think we need fewer officers. I think we need fewer committee meetings. I think we need more focus generally on just a club meeting. In which format that happens, I don't have a strong opinions about that. If I do it in a reasonably efficient manner, it's maybe 30 minutes to set up everything. And that includes then the setup and testing. I usually arrive an hour before the meeting starts. As of late, I've been arriving 2 hours before just because I wanted to take some of these wonderful photos that you're seeing and for my YouTube content. But I usually budget about an hour for it. It's also a good idea to have some kind of checklist to go through. Once you've established a good rhythm. The reason why I arrive an hour before is that I always want to try something else, right? Sometimes I want to put the laptop on a little stand, sometimes just on the table, just try it out. Messing around with the lights, it's just the kind of stuff that I like to do. Like nobody will ever see the result of that, but that's just me. So, but I need at least half an hour to make it work correctly. The first thing I want to encourage you to do is definitely to just experiment and start now, start before you're ready, figure it out. It's not going to be perfect, but that's okay. Remember that we are doing this in a safe and supportive atmosphere. If Toastmasters is anything, it's that. We are allowed to try things and fail and get the support of our club members. So really, I would say take this opportunity to leverage that fact, because I've often said that Toastmasters meeting is one of the only places where I know where somebody will say something nice to you at every meeting. That's not going to be the case for every work meeting. It's not going to be the case when you come home to your family. But at a Toastmasters meeting, we have this supportive and cooperative environment. So take the opportunity to start and experiment. And we are, Toastmasters is known for developing speaking and leadership skills. But I think one of the most underappreciated aspects of Toastmasters is the organizing meeting skills. Our meetings, they start on time. Everybody knows what they're doing. There's an agenda. People stick to their time. If every corporate meeting was like this, we would have a better place. So I really encourage you to leverage this idea of that Toastmasters are great at organizing meetings. And this is where I think Toastmasters International has an opportunity to take a lead in this. We are already good at organizing meetings, but if we can also get great at hybrid meetings, that's an awesome opportunity. And I think a club quality meeting experience is the thing that's going to help you grow, and it's going to help you reach more members, which was the basic idea that we were talking about here. So really take advantage of that safe and nurturing and encouraging environment to get started with hybrid meetings. That would be my recommendation. And where that leads to, we will find out. Maybe we can meet up next year and revisit this topic. If you've been getting value from this video, please consider subscribing. I post a new video here every Thursday, and they're always about helping you engage better with your audience. And if you want to learn more about hybrid meetings, click or tap the screen right here. That's my full playlist of all the videos that I have on the channel about hybrid meetings. We cover technical aspects as well as leadership and communication aspects as they relate to hybrid meetings. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.